Welcome back to The Blindsiders. I am Ben. I'm joined here by Dylan and Brian, and we are here to talk about episode 10, I believe, of Survivor 42. I always forget to check on the episode number this week in the season.
Yeah.
And we're back here. We have the very important podcast of three white dudes get to talk about the experience of Black women and survivors. Definitely worth tuning in for.
Yeah. I mean, the one saying here is none of us currently have dreads. Unlike Jonathan trying to interject his point of view into a situation that perhaps he shouldn't have been interjecting in. So that's like the one thing we have going for us. Obviously, we're going to try to approach it as, respectfully as possible. Because I mean another episode we've had this last season. We've had similar things on the previous season of Big Brother, where it's a very serious and timely topic, and it's a good thing that Survivor is exposing their primarily white fan base to these types of topics. I think it can only lead to more positive conversations going forward.
One would hope.
Yeah, hopefully.
Yeah. But yeah, I guess, before we jump into the tribal council, we have to, I guess, set up the two things that happened before the immunity challenge that weren't super important, but kind of, I guess, played into the eventual first good of the episode in Dylan's winner pick, Roxroy.
Yes.
I started looking up what it's like to eat a ghost pepper and how it feels going down, and how if you eat enough and you react poorly enough to it, you can end up in the hospital.
Okay,
so that'll be cool.
And fair, we do not want you to do this. At least I do not want you to do this.
Nothing that can be done about
I'm ambivalent. I like I've mentioned before, I already have to eat a different, even hotter pepper for separate reasons. So it's not really, I'm not gonna be the one to be like, wow, eating peppers that are super hot is like so irresponsible. Like, I'd be very hypocritical.
I just am extra sympathetic due to
Sure,
my stomach issues. It's just like this. Don't do it. Don't put yourself through this.
Yep. So I'm a little nervous about that too. A little like a trick for the ones watching the simulcast. Of the three of us here, two of us have taken edibles. It's up to you to just figure out which two or and which one did not. So that'll be interesting. Yeah, Roxroy should have been voted out. I'm surprised that he was when he was, because Roxroy did not play a good game. So I'm a man of my word. Much like Mike, I'm gonna eat that pepper. I just have to find one. We may have to do an alternative if I can't find a proper one, but I'm working that out with the producers.
To be fair, Mike didn't end up being a man.
I was gonna say that.
I
was gonna bring that up.
So,
much like Mike, I'm a man of my word. So,
so that means you're not gonna do it then.
Maybe.
Go back.
Dylan's like, listen, Mike, he's a Mets fan. I'm a Yankees fan. Mets fans, they're not men of their words. Yankees fans are.
I will be eating something spicy on the finale, no matter what. So we'll see. My backup was to do, like those like the ghost pepper chips. I think
those are actually really tasty.
They are very good, but if you would eat an entire bag for an hour on the podcast, it may get very hot.
It will.
But the logistics of that is also I'd be chewing on the podcast the whole time. For the
I've always said, how they have like the one chip challenge thing.
Yep.
It's the same. You if you want to get through that, you should buy the bag of the ghost pepper chips and microdose yourself over a week, so that when you get to it, it's not quite as bad.
I think there's a challenge where you have to eat a certain amount of the whole bag in under an hour, or maybe it's multiple bags or something like that. They are very tasty, but they're very hot.
That's the thing. They're tasty enough to where you're oh, I really enjoy this, but then you have that this is not that pleasant. I can't eat that many of them.
And then it's
And
also
then you forget.
It's a third of how hot the ghost pepper is, maybe even less. So
Yeah, right.
it's also like, do I want to do this? So we'll see. But I'm for sure doing something. Roxroy, I don't know what went wrong. He had that one great episode where he reversed time, and then it really seems like it kind of like he was in the background since then, and then all of a sudden, this episode he really kind of just went head over heels in the bad way.
A victim of circumstance, kind of a victim of a bad twist. I'm not saying he would have won, but like I'm not convinced he would have gotten voted off this episode.
I think if Roxroy was on maybe like 20 seasons ago, he'd be a better player than he was now. That's not an original thought of mine. I saw that
maybe even like I don't know if 20. I would say if he pre-Survivor Micronesia, he would have been like he would have fit in. But
I think they said single digits Roxroy would have been very good. Yeah, bummer, because I was skeptical he was going to win, but I thought he was going to be getting a little further. And as we see today, I think that alliances are really they're I don't think there's any solid alliance, maybe other than Mike and High on that island, and I feel like we're really heading towards a collision course of Mike and High going separate ways very soon. So I don't think anybody's loyal to anybody.
I will say I think of like the existing alliances we see, like they're the two who are actually both fairly capable players. Jonathan has revealed himself to be a fucking moron in strategy this episode. Not great.
I think you got a bad edit. We'll get into
I don't think it was the edit. I think he
get into it.
He had some pretty like obvious holes in his logic that Lindsay was like, hey, this doesn't make any sense. And he was like, no, it does, actually. It's like, okay, great.
Yeah, we'll obviously get there, but I think that when you're responding with like a question of like, oh well, what happens if this happens, and you just like kind of stare for a few seconds, you're like, stop coming at me, at me, like, yeah. I see here you kind of lose your high ground there, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess before we get into this, like the real important thing that we see that kind of sets up, like, because this episode, for much of this, is very much like the Roxroy loses episode, in my opinion. And the kind of setup to that we got before the Immunity Challenge was a conversation between Mike, Jonathan, and Roxroy, where they're like, hey, there are more men than women, for the first time in the game, I think, technically. Maybe this is a time where the men can take over, because there is a 7-person alliance. 5 out of the 7 of them are men, with Drea and Lindsay being the other 2. Or there was a 7-person alliance.
Yeah, not anymore.
I think that this is kind of the first instance of like misplaced logic from somebody in an episode, because the whole like big men always come after each other and that's why they lose narrative in Survivor, to me, just doesn't hold any water. Like there's like obviously I think that it's less big men and more just like obvious social strategic threats. And sometimes they happen to be big men. Like this idea
lions
that, like,
and hyena hypothesis that Tony put forward.
Right. And so I think that like hasn't, like, maybe like very early, because like, we talk about Roxroy being somebody who's thinking about Survivor as if it's like 2003. Like that kind of thought process where like big challenge threats or big physical players are targeted or like target each other and then get taken out just like hasn't been the case in Survivor in a long time. So this kind of felt more like kind of just making an excuse to form a new alliance, right? Where Roxroy was kind of more positively stationed, but without actually having any of the social capital to pull it off. Because as we see, Roxroy approaches both Omar and High about this, and they don't really have very positive reactions.
No,
Go ahead, Brian.
No, I was just gonna say those are the two who I think I would be in the same spot, whereas being like, hey man, an all guys alliance does not really benefit me. If we're being honest, I'm not an alpha bro, and I think those two are like, I'm not like an alpha bro. This isn't like good for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Dylan, what was your thoughts on this?
Sorry, I'm actively texting my brother who is just now getting the tribal on his watch, so that's interesting. See how he does that with that. I think all gender alliances in general are just bad ideas, whether it's men or women.
It worked 2 times, and that's it.
It's just it's not something that really works. Seems like it's something that's brought up at least once every season, every few seasons that they try to actually go through with it, and it never works. It's dumb, and that was like Rocksroy's biggest mistake. Was that it's just it seems like every time we have an alliance together once this season, other than Mike and High, who at the beginning weren't even together, once we have an alliance together, the first move is to right away break off into another alliance. It's happened every single episode this season, and strategizing is not wrong, but it seems like they want to break off with a majority of the alliance already in, and then taking a few others, and then alienate maybe 1 or 2 people. And it's I think that we're heading towards an area where I don't know who is going to trust who after this. Even like I don't think that we'll have like an alliance between Drea and Marianne, because having 2 people with that much that many idols together also wouldn't work, and like they would turn on each other. So it's just like I'm just surprised there's not a really strong alliance this year, because of how often they want to switch it up. And maybe it's just recency bias, but I feel like I haven't seen this many switch ups this quick in a show with alliances, not recently at least.
Yeah, I mean, we're definitely in the like post-modern, like post-big move era. Like the game will never go back to, you know, like the more simplistic style, just because the narrative around like you have to be building your resume, you have to be making these moves, has so ingrained itself within, you know, the Survivor meta. And also some players have been able to play that game to great effect and to win, but now everyone feels like that's like the only path to victory, when it is not the only path to victory. I mean, look at Erica last season. She certainly didn't play that way, but I think because the notion of that is out there, so many players attempt to do it, that it makes like the season very volatile and the narrative a little messy when you only have an hour to try to explain why these people are making alliances and immediately flipping on one another.
Yeah, I think another thing too is, and this kind of is something that's brought up a little bit in the first tribal council of the night, which is the number of kind of twists and like things that are coming up in the game that you can't really prepare for. Probably lends itself to that style of gameplay a little bit more too as well, because you can't really just rely on having a solid group and a plan and just sticking to it 100% of the time and just going through with it. Like, you kind of need to have all of these contingency plans, and those contingency plans kind of create situations where your deals and your alliances are just not going to be as strong, because you have to be prepared to turn on them if certain circumstances within the game come up. So maybe that's like, you know, whether or not this style of gameplay is like, you know, good television or like creates good narrative storytelling is kind of up in the air. But I think that, you know, that's at least one consequence of these twists that's kind of outside of the realm of the twists themselves.
Has this twist ever been good? Like, we've done it like 5 times if you want to count like Gabon's like fake merge at the final 10. Like, and it's just, I mean, I guess Gabon is probably the one season where it's at least somewhat interesting, but this is I hate this so much. I think it's so dumb, and it adds like nothing to the game. Obviously, this time it invoked a very serious conversation, which that's interesting and good. But like in terms of propelling the game in a way that's compelling, it doesn't do anything for me.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. I mean, I messaged like when the twist first came up because it was teased on this episode that two people would be voted out, and like I didn't know if it was going to be this twist or if it was going to be like a new thing. It ended up being this like unmerged twist or whatever you want to call it.
We should have seen it coming because this is the sequel season to last season, and they did this last season.
We 1,000,000% should have seen it coming.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's never, in my opinion, made the season better on purpose. You're taking 2 rounds of the game at the final 10 and the final 9, which are usually very interesting rounds where like power can actually start to shift because you've eliminated some of the early merge cannon fodder, and the alliances are starting to look inward on each other and be like, ooh, we're playing this game of chicken. I'm like, oh, somebody have to make a move here. Are we gonna maybe play some idols, make some kind of a play? But instead, you usually end up with a situation where 2 people just kind of unceremoniously get eliminated, and then you move on, and like we basically skipped 2 rounds of the game for no reason,
right?
Which is kind of what happens here. And so we just play. It's I guess we're skipping over those rounds and doing 2 in one episode, but like they could have been interesting rounds if they were normal. And now there's like basically 3 real rounds left in the game, maybe 4. Like we have 8, 6, 7, 5, and then like fire making, and then final 3. So like at best we have 4 more opportunities for like an interesting move to be made. And yeah, I don't know. We've just kind of thrown away a third of the opportunities that we had left for like obviously Rockstar getting blindsided is something interesting to talk about, but I don't know. I don't love it. What are your thoughts, Dylan?
The twist itself I hated. I kind of do like the wrench that is thrown in with these alliances, even though it's kind of contradictory to what I was just saying about staying strong to alliances. Is that when you get into this situation, I guess really anything can happen. I think that overall idea I enjoy, but like we said, it almost never ends well, or like it's never played out well in the game. And so yeah, I hate the twist. I like, and it ended up just accelerating out 2 people that I think were going to be out relatively soon anyway. Like I said, I thought Rockstar would go a little further, but I didn't think that Tori would have a chance. I think the way that we got her out was very, very interesting, obviously, but I don't know. I don't think it, like we said, it doesn't add anything. I don't think that this was a particularly very interesting episode from the viewer side. The discussion we had at the end is very, very interesting, but it just doesn't create something that I enjoy to watch when we do this, because it really just it's not the game that I want to be played. Because I think it's just much better when you have a giant group there trying to figure it out. As we saw last week, when you have somebody like Romeo who has time to like let it settle that he's the one that's going to go, or he like at least thinks that he's the one that's going to go, and then causes chaos. Where this one, it's like, oh, it's over, you're all split up, and then like I think they only had like 2-3 hours, it seemed like, to kind of scramble. And I don't know, Rocksroy buried himself, but like I think we could have got there a little better, is what I'm saying. Without this twist. Talk about rambling. That was my ramble. I don't like the twist.
Yeah.
Yeah. So regardless, this is how it's gonna be. We're split up into 2 teams of 5 temporarily. And they're going to play an individual immunity challenge that's also going to count as a team reward for the one player who ends up lasting the longest out of everybody, where they're going to get a little like mini feast thing, which actually looked pretty good
Yeah.
as far as Survivor Awards go. And they're
No
also going
Applebee's.
to get the advantage of
Applebee's.
information.
Yeah. So I really, my favorite part about this was, hey guys, I know it's the tide does not work for this challenge at all, but we don't have any time, so you're gonna do it anyways. And most of you are gonna fall off within a minute, and that's very fun and very funny. Jonathan surprised me. I thought someone being that heavy would not particularly do well, but he can do anything athletically, it seems. I thought High was gonna beat him at the very least when it got down to those two, but yeah, good on him, good on High too, and kind of proved what High was saying, where like he needs Jonathan as a shield because he's potentially right behind him in terms of, you know, being good at what these merge challenges are going to be.
I do want to give props to High though. Is that he rightfully very quickly snuffed out Romeo being the one to vote for him. He called him out for it. Recognizes that like he can't be trusted, and like he said, this vote particularly is or it should be a vote of using your brain and not your heart. And I'm glad that he went that route. Like I said, Roxroy being voted out makes sense. He was falling apart, and I think you have Romeo there, who is just kind of just there now, in my opinion. But we'll see. We'll see if we'll get more of him. But I think he's really kind of just dead in the water, just there now. But he's survived now 2 different votes that I thought that he would go. But like I said, I think High made the proper move here. I'm just really curious of what High's path forward is, of who he's going to align himself with, other than Mike.
Yeah, it'll definitely be interesting. I mean, I don't really know who's being set up as the winner at the moment.
I don't either.
It's very unclear to me, and he would be the one that I'd put my money on, and if not him, it'd be Drea. But it's going to be difficult for either of them to get to the finals, given that like Taku has not lost a member yet, and the other tribes have both lost 2 of their members in this merge already, which is very interesting.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with that. I mean, like, and even on this episode, you know, we're gonna get to the other tribe at some point, but there is talk about like, oh, the Taku 4 could actually take this down to the top 4, which is not really something that was vocalized previously, because up until this episode, it definitely seemed like Marianne was being left out of a lot of the strategy talk and a lot of the plans, to the point where she was like having, you know, a bunch of strategic conversations with Tori of all people. So yeah, definitely something to keep an eye on. And I agree, especially after this episode with the 2 people who got eliminated leaving. I think you could legitimately make an argument for any of the people remaining as a potential winner from an editing perspective. I think Tori and Roxroy were the 2 that were 9 and 10 on my list.
Yeah, I think it goes to show how bad the Taku tribe has handled Marianne, because it seems like they could have included her in a way to where, even if they weren't like directly working with her at the time, make her feel like she was in it, so that if they did just shift back to them being a 4, she wouldn't feel like left out. But they clearly didn't do that.
But it seems particularly Jonathan, it seems like that he's under the influence that she is still very on board, because he keeps going to her.
Yeah,
and the other
he
thing,
takes her for granted very much, which is not great.
Other than Roxroy, obviously this is a very, very bad episode for Jonathan.
Yeah.
So definitely got exposed himself for being a little bit of a dum-dum this week.
In multiple ways.
I don't understand why his go-to, and like I guess it's now self-explanatory, there's a little bit of a dum-dum, is that why would you not go for Tori knowing that Tori and Drea hate each other? I think that, and I get his logic of like, don't tell Tori anything because that makes the most sense overall. Because you still have the numbers against Drea, so it doesn't even matter. Like, don't tell Tori anything. That would have been the logical choice. So I do get him being, because you see Marianne goes to Tori and tells her almost everything. I do believe that if they were wanting to go Tori, I do think maybe Marianne would have told her. So like, I also don't know how strong she really is with Taku. With that said, I agree. But like Omar's a real player. Omar is gonna eventually realize, meat shield or not, like Jonathan has to go. Like there's 0%.
Maybe I don't know. I don't know if anyone's gonna take him seriously, like as a actual like competent player in this, and reward him with $1 million. You know, if everyone's like, "Oh, this guy's an idiot," like he's strong but he's dumb. I don't know if he's necessarily in the position there where he gets to the end and wins.
I disagree. I mean, before this episode, I would have disagreed even more. I do think that he's very well liked around there. I think that people are kind of just recognize that he's the big ogre of the group. But I do think that he's very liked. That's my opinion. I think the edit, particularly in this episode, was very generous of being anti him. So I don't know, because it's tough to figure out which side is the real edit, what's really going on and what's not. So I don't know. I was under the assumption he was very, very liked before this. Mm-hmm. So I felt like if he could win out, I thought he would have been strategic enough to win. Yeah. Like I thought his social game was strong enough to be able to win. I'm like, I still think that now, but it's less so. So I mean, I think that he would have a good chance. I think now he has to basically win out though. So it's kind of like I think he would have to win out to win it, but I still think he could win it.
I'm tending to more agree with Brian here, especially if we are going to be dissecting the edit. I don't really think that this show would, from the strategic beach side of it, go out of their way to show both Marianne and Lindsay pointing out that Jonathan is kind of strategically incompetent and socially incompetent in some ways, when it doesn't actually end up mattering at the end of the day from the end result of the episode. Like none of that conversation and discussion needed to be like told for the story. So it would feel very weird for the show to include that if Jonathan were the eventual winner, in my opinion. So
it's a good point.
Yeah, I if we're really talking about editing only, I think that Jonathan is like one of the least likely people to win for me after that. And also, I do kind of agree with Brian that this episode definitely showed that the people that are closest to him, like I would argue that Lindsay is probably the closest to him strategically at this point. If the people who are closest to him don't even really respect him from the standpoint of the game outside of like him being a number and somebody who's strong and like carried them through challenges and like a shield, like I don't see him particularly doing well in the jury vote at this point, even if he is likable, because I think that like most of the cast is likable at this point. I think the one person that was potentially considered unlikable was Tori, and she's now gone. So I don't really see who he's going to be winning up against in a final three just on likability alone.
Well, I guess everything you just said, I thought was a great point. So I guess I'm tending to agree more. And like I said, this episode definitely hurt his case more so in my eyes. I guess, not to like quickly name off everyone, I guess I think that he could beat Romeo.
Sure. Yeah, Romeo doesn't have any friends.
Like I'm saying absolutely, like I think he could beat him. I think he could beat Romeo. I thought he would. I thought he could beat Roxbury before tonight.
Sure.
I thought he could beat Tori. So I guess, yeah, I don't know. I guess he is towards the bottom then, because I think everybody else I can see a situation where they could win compared to where Romeo I don't think that he could. So, yeah.
There you go. I would agree.
Yeah, and I also don't think they necessarily would have included him kind of pushing back on Drea and Marianne's point.
I think that's less. I think less
maybe
about
not. Yeah,
I think that kind of set up an important part of the conversation. Like we can go
Yeah.
over like we're gonna go over like the very obviously that conversation in more detail, but
yeah.
I think that they keep that in regardless probably, just because it was kind of important to the overall flow of the discussion.
I'm not
Yeah,
giving up on him.
it
Though.
was-
I think he could have a bounce back week next week. You know, maybe he switches. Maybe he joins. Maybe he starts an all girls alliance with him and all the girls. I don't know.
Maybe.
We'll see.
I'm just looking forward to him on the challenge. Not that I watch the challenge, but I assume he'll do great.
I'm surprised. I'm surprised he won this. This is a challenge that like I feel like typically big people do not do well on. So
No.
very much surprised that he won this challenge.
Yeah.
And now that challenge threat Tori is out, I mean, he is just like open to run the rest of the way.
And people keep talking about how physical Mike is. I mean, maybe I haven't seen it. Like I feel like that if you put Mike in a situation really against everyone other than Jonathan, I thought it was a much more an even playing field than the Jonathan. So Mike like looks fit, and I know he's a fireman, but I didn't get the assumption that he was this physical challenger. But they talk about him like he is.
Right. Yeah, I don't know. But yeah, I guess should we get to the second tribal council? I mean, I think
Yeah, sure. I mean, we can
Cover
kind of set up
graphs.
the strategy ahead of it so that there's like kind of a little bit of context of that going in. But the context is like as we referenced, Jonathan wants to blindside Drea. The way he pitches it, like I was like, oh yes, this makes a lot of sense when he started talking about it to Marianne, and then he was like, okay, we're gonna tell Drea that the decoy vote is you, and I was like,
Yep.
why? Why not? What? Tori is right there. Tori is like this. So like I was like, oh yeah, we're gonna tell Drea that the decoy vote is Tori, right? And he's like, no, it's Marianne. Like what?
Yeah. No, I mean,
yeah.
this has been so, like, I think probably the first one where it's like very standout was like Jonathan Fincher and Samoa being like, I don't want to be the decoy vote. And it's come up again and again, you know, Sierra and Second Chance in the pre-merge being a similar situation. No one wants to be the decoy vote because you feel like, okay, I'm expendable. Why would I feel good about this? Why would I go along with this plan that worst case scenario, I'm the one getting voted off?
Yeah.
So
especially when you know the target has an idol.
Yeah, just a complete unforced error on Jonathan's part. Can't explain it. Doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah.
And like I said,
Lindsay points it out.
I really thought before that he maybe I need to go back and watch. I thought he was a much better strategist before this. Like with some bloopers that like this was really bad. And I get why I get why like it's time to start getting down on him. I thought he was a much better strategist before this. That's why I was so shocked that he proposed that.
Hey, we
That's
got
true
this...
though. Like you say that and I'm like it just feels like he was, and then this, like I said, this episode really just exposed him in his strategic game.
He's very much living up to. We made the comparison earlier in the season of Steven and JT. He's very much living up the speed running the JT without Steven's strategic gameplay. Because oof, boy, he needs Omar to set him straight.
Council without Omar there, he's off the fucking rails.
Yep,
It's a good point. Yeah, it's a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you say like Jonathan has shown himself to be strategically competent before this, but like there really hasn't been. Like they went to one tribal council pre-merge, and it was basically like a universal decision. It wasn't a super complicated vote or anything like that. And since then, at the merge, he's just kind of been quietly in the majority. Like he's played well socially to put himself in a position where he's in a majority alliance. But you know, the first vote, the Lydia vote, was mostly orchestrated by Omar, and this the Chanel vote was mostly orchestrated by Mike, and then like secondarily, Hai was involved in a lot of that strategy. So he just hasn't really been involved in much of the strategy talk to this point. And he even mentions it in this episode. He's like, my strategy has been to take a back seat and just like, you know, be likable and be quiet and like kind of downplay myself because, you know, if I'm the strong guy who's also playing hard strategically, that's like a double whammy. So I think like this is really the first time he really flexed his strategic chops, and it's shown that he doesn't what he's doing.
Yeah,
you're 100% right. I feel like my my love for his physicality and my overestimation of his social game blinded me to maybe you're right. He just has a better strategist, and clearly the one time he was trying to what was the right move on paper, completely fumbled it. So and like it was such a simple mistake to make though overall, where like in his dumb brain he's like, you know what, this is great. So like Marianne's gonna think that I'm completely aligned with her. I'm gonna be like, hey, guess what? You know, we're gonna get Drea. You're good. You're gonna get an idol out of the game, not yours. We're gonna have her vote for you. Like it's that one little thing that basically spiraled everything else completely out of control. After that, so you're right. I've been blinded. My eyes are open now.
Yeah, I don't know if you've ever seen 30 Rock, but it reminds me of John Hamm's character on that, where he's just so handsome that no one's ever told him that he's an idiot and can't do anything right because everyone's just blinded by how handsome he is.
That's exactly what happened for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we saw this with you and Xander last season. I'll just say that.
Yeah.
You have a type.
I guess I guess I do.
Yeah. Oh man. But yeah, so this tribal council, like I said at the top, it brings up, you know, a very important conversation that's kind of outside the game. We got a similar conversation when you know, the I believe we were calling it the camp out last season, right? That's what people were calling it, the betrayed Shan, and it kind of led to all of their undoing in the end. You know, as white people, we would never have to go into a situation like this with baggage outside of the game. That's something that, like, through these kind of conversations and just through, like, real life conversations and listening to people, just, like, I've really, like, come to appreciate and learn that, like, my life is privileged because I never have to think about these kind of things. I never have to, you know, worry that my actions represent anything other than myself. And I think it's very good that these conversations are coming up, because I think if people can kind of recognize that, it will go a long way to helping just in regular life, you know, people meet each other where they are in various conversations around these types of topics.
Yeah. I do think that there's kind of two, like the most important piece of context coming into the tribal council that I think a lot of people may miss is just like, from Marianne's perspective, Drea is the target. And from Drea's perspective, Marianne is the target. This is like the split that's been set up. So both of them are coming into the tribal council, looking at the jury and having like an immediate, like, emotional kind of panic moment where they're like, oh, I'm about to be the one to vote out the third black person in a row and be the only black person left in the game. And like that, just like off the cuff, immediate realization is, I think, the reason that we got kind of the situation that ends up playing out here. Because they're having like an immediate like emotional reaction to the fact that this is like the reality that they're facing, where they're like you know, representing the black race outside of the game in a way that like is not the case for white people coming into a game like Survivor and within media in general. And they're kind of having to immediately reckon with the fact that they're going to be the only one left in the game representing black people in the game. So, and I can completely understand the, like, you know, emotional reaction to that and the panic, and they'll be like, okay, I can't do this. Like, this is not something I want to do right now. Like,
and then
be the one.
Add on to that the what Marianne was talking about, where it's like, now I have to play my idol because someone's gonna be watching this and be like, oh, I played the race card and that's how I got around this, and that's not fair. That sucks. That's detrimental to Marianne's game outside of like the situation. It's so complicated and just a really unenviable position to be placed in. Yeah, it's just so tough.
It there's probably about like 6 or 7 different point of views to look at it that like most are right, maybe some are wrong, but like the overall, I think that the discussion that was had here was so much more productive than the one that we had last season. Both are very relevant, but this one was it added like these nuanced layers and like you said, complications to everything that almost kind of takes away from the main story that it should have been, but then adds on a very real story of race where Drea and Marianne were both like making it clear that like this sucks because I'm in this situation. I don't want to be in this situation. I shouldn't have to be in this situation, but like we're in this situation and we like absolutely have to do what we have to do here, which sucks even worse because like it's a very real issue with race and with women winners before this with Survivor. It's not something that somebody can even debate. Like there's Twitter and Reddit. There's going to be the people that are saying that this is just woke Survivor bullshit. But it's a very real thing that after 43 seasons, people take notice. And it's a discussion that is had every single season for a reason. It's not like it's just being thrown out there now, just as a narrative that isn't real. And so from Drea and Marianne's side, they 100% absolutely did the right thing because they were forced to have to do that, which sucks. It sucks. And the other thing that sucks is that Chanel and Roxroy both deserve to be voted out. But at the same time, you absolutely cannot have of the 4 black people that were on this season, 3 of them are going to be on the council. The first 3
right away. Yeah, right on the jury.
You cannot have that either way, and so that whole discussion is forced in, even though it shouldn't have to be, because you just can't have that because it would just make everything 10 times worse in the Survivor community. So the way that Drea and Marianne handled it was great. I think that this is a big moment for Drea. I think she 100% did the right thing, and at no point did I think that she was being aggressive. But then on the other perspective, I can very much understand Jonathan saying like, "Hey, I'm not racist. Like, I'm not voting for you because I'm racist. I'm voting for you because like you're the logical choice to get out." I can understand that. I think he handled it very, very poorly because I think that's the other side of this too. Is that like, well, I'm not racist. I'm just trying to play this game. And, like, I'm voting you out because you're the choice that should be voted out, and Chanel and Roxroy also should have been voted out. Like, it has nothing to do with race. I'm not racist. And so you have that side, and then I think you kind of have like, and I thought that the way that Lindsay handled it very well was Lindsay was the logical response that like, I acknowledge this is an issue. The situation sucks. Like, but I fully support you. Like like I said, they had no choice. They had to do what they had to do. Because if you had Drea and Marianne vote against each other, you have a third black person on the jury, and then they now have to answer that, oh, you aided to that, which I think was the struggle that Deshaun had last season too. So that, like, he had to vote someone out. It's the logical choice because you're really picking between the two sides of the coin. And so it's like you said, it's fucking complicated. It sucks, but it's a discussion that needs to be had. It's something that needs to be dealt with, but like there is a game to be played too. And so I thought the discussion was great, but then I think the way that everything kind of played out after that, I thought just fucking sucked. Like I said, I hated the way everything played out after that. Like, they should have went to vote. I don't know why Jeff recommended for them to just sit. Like, I don't know why that was his like recommendation to do that. Because like I think they still had the vote, and then we had that super complicated situation of Tori playing a shot in the dark, and then you have Lindsay who, like, if she plays a shot in the dark, what happens after that? Is everybody then like able to be voted against? And so like, is then Lindsay then the villain if she plays her shot in the dark? It's like it sucked.
So I think it makes sense because I was kind of thinking like, Tori is the one who they're all voting for, and then Tori's putting her vote on Lindsay. So it doesn't matter if Lindsay plays her shot in the dark, because if she gets it, she's only blocking one vote. So it made sense for Tori to be the only one to play it, because it's the only one that matters is Tori getting it. I think that's fair.
Hypothetically, there's now 2 safes in the pot, correct? There's technically
it's
now
unclear. It's
It's
unclear if there's a 1 in 6 shot. I think, or the 2 in 12.
It's the 2 in
shot.
12. Because
we're unsure since they did like this weird demerge situation. We just don't know. Yeah, because if there's our 2 shots in the dark, then if they both play the shot in the dark, then neither of them would have been eligible. No one would have been eligible. Then I guess they all just go back to camp. I'm not sure how that works. I don't know, like if Jeff explained
Jonathan,
like there's only 1 because there's only 5 of you. That's tough. I like to think there's only 1 in 6, but we just don't know.
The other like the ending of that whole conversation too, and the fucked up part is that Tori was gonna go home no matter what. If Dre played an idol, I believe that Tori was the one that was gonna go home. Tori probably should have went home either way. So then there's gonna be that whole side of the discussion saying Tori only went home because she's white with all the crazy people. So that's I hated that we had to do that. And like I said, it was 100% necessary.
Yeah.
It's 100% necessary to have happen. And like Tori also had to play the shot in the dark, even though she then looks like the white villain. It's like it's all like it's just fucked. Like I don't. It's just
I don't think this reflects poorly on Tori. Playing her shot in the dark. I mean, she's still playing the game regardless of the situation. She still has a mechanic that can potentially save her, and she's perfectly within her right to play for it and to try to stay in the game. Like, I don't think it necessarily reflects poorly on her.
I think if anything, Tori handled this like way better than I think 90% of people would.
Mm-hmm.
I think 90% of people would be really annoyed. But yeah, I agree that like the discussion was very good, very productive, and I thought that especially like Marianne did a very good job of kind of summing up the like whole like kind of way that this conversation often gets misconstrued and twisted around, and like that's kind of what it felt like Jonathan was doing, intentional or not, of like turning an emotional reaction based off of like a social situation based on race that is kind of drawn in from outside of the game, because you know, while it's a game, it's still a very social game, and racial bias and you know, implicit bias are things that occur within social interactions, whether they're in a game or in real life. And taking that as like kind of a personal affront onto him, and I think that's like a thing that happens in real life with a lot of people who are kind of faced with the experiences of marginalized people for the first time, where they take kind of an explanation of an experience as like a personal attack or a personal affront, when it's really just kind of like, this is my experience and my feeling, and like how I have to process that and how that affects the decisions that I have to make, and like, you know, approaching people or having conversations, or whether, you know, it affects the way you have to play a reality television show. And I think that like regardless of whether, you know, Jonathan like kind of looked like an ass a little bit, it was overall good that happened, in terms of like having somebody make that argument and then be shut down on it, because I think that's like the normal argument that a lot of people who aren't really used to this conversation happening are like going to make as like a snap kind of judgment. So hopefully there are people who like took that conversation and learned from it, like Brian said at the top of the show. But yeah, as far as the actual game mechanics goes and the way that was handled, I 100% agree with Dylan. I hate when they don't go through the pomp and circumstance of the vote in situations like this. I hate this kind of Ben Driebergen situation where we've now decided that you can play hidden immunity idols before the vote happens when that was never the case before Survivor 35, and Jeff just kind of decided on a whim in that season that it was allowed when it never was before. And like I think that not holding a vote and not having Tori make the decision on the shot in the dark in private, while I don't think it would have ended up mattering in this case at all, like I think Tori still goes home 100% of the time here. It still eliminates opportunity for angles of deception to happen, and like obviously in this instance there was no angles of deception, right? But like I don't like the precedent that it sets of like kind of deciding when certain things kind of create a break in the way the game mechanics work. So that's kind of my take on that. I don't know what your thoughts on that are.
Yeah, I mean, I think they probably should have just done the vote. I think it makes it cleaner. The only thing I can think is like perhaps we only saw like, you know, a short section. The tribal council probably went on for a lot longer. It was probably like very emotional and very like to the point where Jeff was like, maybe we don't need to do like the pomp and circumstance of the vote. Maybe this is just like we need to kind of streamline it because it's changed the game. I mean, we've only had a couple of instances like this. You know, Brandon quitting, so well, not quitting, but getting like publicly voted off of Survivor Kermo, and obviously Varner getting voted off of Game Changers, where, you know, it takes a very extreme circumstance to do this. Like, I don't see Jeff doing it just like for no reason. You know what I mean?
Sure, but I think in both of those instances, there's a better argument for doing it because it's like, we have this problematic person who is just gonna kind of quietly be shoved out really quickly. We don't need to go through a vote. Whereas in this case, like Tori didn't do anything. Like, you know, we can argue about Tori outside the game, whatever we want, but like Tori didn't do anything wrong. Like, you know, it felt like kind of Tori's exit was kind of robbed from her in a lot of ways, and she was just kind of shoved out the door.
Very much so. That's another great point, is that we really should have had this like villainous send off of like the tribe finally uniting and voting her off, and we were kind of robbed of that too. So that also sucks.
And yeah, I don't like, you know, I'm not like, you know, hurting hard for Tori like that, but I think narratively it's kind of like it felt rushed and it felt kind of awkward when if they just done a normal vote. They all vote for Tori. They play their idols, like a show of respect to the, like, you know, their knowledge that the meta game of the show is going to potentially create an uncomfortable situation for them outside of the game. Tori plays her shot in the dark. She still loses the 1 in 6, and she still goes home. Like, it would have changed nothing to just do it normally. It would have, like, created. It wouldn't have like kind of set this precedent where like kind of complicated mechanics just mean that they're like, okay, throw everything out and we're going to do it this way instead.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not super passionate either way about it, just because it is such a strange circumstance.
Yeah.
Thank God this isn't the one time that the dice was successful.
Well, yeah,
would have been maybe the worst scenario of someone that should have been voted out. It's gonna add a larger complication to the overall discussion being had at that tribal, and also you're gonna have somebody who in Lindsay who was voted out for like really through absolutely quite literally zero fault of her own. Yeah. That would have been worst case scenario for the game. I kind of wish it happened just to see the outbreak after, because like
but
that would have
there's nothing. There would have been nothing like mechanically wrong with her. Say nothing of idols and shot. But
it would have been an advantage yet in 2.0.
Right.
Where it's just like, oh, everyone just happens to be except for you.
Except for you.
It's so bad, so sad.
Because you would never have a situation. Most of the times you wouldn't of 4 people being safe in a 5-person vote. Like that would
try 5 out of 6.
that would suck. That's true. We fucking got it earlier this season, basically.
I was thinking Suri in Game Changers. Advantage Geddon has been
yes. That would have been bad. So I'm glad that didn't happen. That would have sucked because I would have been very upset for Lindsay, and like I kind of would have hated the shot in the dark at that point because
it would have kind of made sense as to why she's so under edited. That was how she went.
Although she was tied for the highest edits this week.
This week,
3.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, she played a big role in decision making this week. So that makes sense. And I definitely noticed a big spike in her visibility for sure.
Yeah.
Which also, was between that and how ridiculous this boot being for her would have been as an explanation for why she's been kind of under-edited, did make me worry for a second that Tori was going to win the flip, and then she did, and I was like, okay, that's fine.
Because it has to happen. Because like if we go out the entire season of people playing it, of 2 seasons in a row and no one getting it, it's another just failure of these past 2 seasons to tack on.
Yeah, I mean, it's fine. I mean, I think it can't 100% save you, and it's so unlikely to save you that I'm like pretty whatever about it,
I just hope I hope the first time that happens, it's like not in a shitty situation like it could have been here.
Mm-hmm. I think there's certainly worse twists. Like I personally think like the Idol Nullifier is like a especially egregious addition to the game.
Or there's technically one idol left in the game if we're ignoring the amulets, which all 3 of the amulets are all still in the game. So and that's Mike's. However,
but it is really Drea's idol.
It's really Drea's because she has the advantage that is, as we talked about, one of the most imbalanced survivor twists ever of the knowledge power advantage, where she has this in secret. Nobody could possibly know that she has it, or that it could even be a thing that exists. And she also, because of the mechanics of the idols, knows with 100% certainty that Mike is the last person left in the game with an idol. So, essentially, Mike's idol is hers if she wants it at any point.
Yeah, that's hers.
So
that's why I probably put her ahead of High for who I think who's set up now to win. I think it's her because I think she has the respect of the jury. I think she definitely won it over a lot more tonight with how well she did with that entire thing. And then she also has that. Doesn't she? I think she still has an extra vote as well.
Her and Marianne are the 2 people I believe who have extra votes right now.
So she's in a very, very good spot, and I think that's why I'll put her ahead of High. She's
the thing.
Set up.
She steals Mike's idol, uses it. Maybe 2 votes down the line, maybe the next 2 people out are High and Lindsay. Now Drea has a 3rd idol for free.
Yeah. So, hey.
I think
I think Drea is like, unless she makes massive misplays, I think she's just in the final 5, right?
Yep.
Yep.
That's why I guess she would have to really fumble it here to not make final 5 at least.
Yeah, so we'll see. Anything else?
No, she would be a very satisfying winner too, which was nice because I think like not as Erica wasn't as satisfying, even though I thought she did a great job to get there. But Drea, that would be very well played, and I think she would be the second woman 2 years in a row of women winning it, but she would be the first. Having a black woman win it would be huge too for that whole conversation. So I'm probably rooting for Drea from here on out, even though I still have my love for Jonathan. So
black woman in 38 seasons.
Yeah. God, what was that? 2002.
Yep.
One. Yeah. Jesus Christ. Never forget Vesepia. The show has done everything in its power to make you forget about Vesepia, but as super fans, we'll never forget.
Yeah. I mean, I think personally that all of the winners that I think are likely at this point would be satisfying. Like I think that Omer would be a satisfying winner. I think Hai would be a satisfying winner. I think Dre would be a satisfying winner. I think even Mike would be a satisfying winner. And I think like those four are kind of people I'm looking at as the people who are probably one of those four is probably the winner at this point. So
Yeah.
yeah, I don't think I'm going to be dissatisfied with the outcome of the season at this point.
I think Romeo would be dissatisfying to me, but like
Yeah, but I don't think
I don't think you have to worry about that.
we were saying the same similar things about Erica at this point last season too. At least I was in my head. So
yeah, I mean, to me though, Erica was at the end of the day the most satisfying winner of that final, I guess, four. Like when it got to the final four, I was like, okay, I really hope Erica wins because like I don't want any of the other three to win. I don't think any of the other three deserve to win.
Right.
So I can't really put Romeo in a final four where I would be rooting for him. So yeah, I listed the four people who I would be rooting for, and if I guess the four of them are the four that aren't in a final four, then maybe we could have a situation akin to Erica, but I don't think that's happening. So
Yeah.
I'm pretty content at this point with the season.
For sure.
also off topic, but I did some research last week after we talked about favorite merge tribe names, because it got me thinking about like maybe I went back and looked at all the seasons of that I've watched just to get the names of it, and Solarion from Kagiyan I think maybe my favorite, and that's just purely off of just reading them when I was going through the list. So that's my answer. I know people are waiting on that.
That was one of the ones I brought up because Brian said that he hated the portmanteau portmanteau merge tribe names, but I said that was the one that the one portmanteau name that I did like.
Sounded like a Pokemon. Yeah. Yeah. Also, we forgot to mention Balboa, which I did think was a good name.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, for that season. Yeah, I don't have anything else to add. You guys got anything?
No, yeah. I mean, obviously, very difficult episode to talk about, you know, gracefully and with like respect. You know, but I hope we did a decent job. And I'm excited to see, you know, how this end game plays out. It's very strategically complicated. There's a lot of moving parts. The alliances are very unclear. And with Tori out, especially, I don't really like Romeo is really the one person who's left in the game who doesn't really have an anchor to anything. So I don't think we're really going to have any more boring rounds, hopefully. At this point.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. I think, yeah, even after, you know, maybe kind of being up and down on this episode and maybe the episode before too, though, like I still think that the season is very, very good. I think that we're set up for a great ending, no matter which way it shapes out. And also, like it's kind of what you said. It's a tribute to how good this cast is that like pretty much everybody is left as likable, which you cannot say for every season. For sure. So that's another, I think, really, it'll add more suspense for us because I feel like we just didn't really have suspense last season at all. At least I didn't. So I am really looking forward to that. Even with Xander there, I just wasn't suspensed at all. So I definitely am with this season. So I'm still very, very happy about that, and I hope it's really just pure gameplay from here on out. But I will say to kind of end that whole thing is that it's still very good to have these discussions. It's like the issues are when we're not having these discussions, and we're obviously not the authority at all with that, but it's still very important to have it. So I don't mind if this keeps happening on the show until it's just no longer an issue, whenever that may be.
Yeah, my only hope is that the people who, like, at first were like, I don't want this to be a part of the show are at least like somewhat open to hearing about it the more it comes up. I don't know if that's a realistic thing to hope for. It feels like people kind of get more and more entrenched in their views, and like kind of like it stacks like, oh, they're bringing this up again. I don't want to hear it, but you know, maybe one or two people out there at least will be like, well, maybe this is something I should consider more fully that I haven't considered before.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, there's, you know, an inclination towards defensiveness for people whether that comes from like closed-mindedness or ignorance, or just not wanting to like kind of face difficult situations, or just
Right.
like seeing discussions as an attack when they're not intended to be an attack. And I'm hopeful that like because that specific scenario played out on the show directly with Jonathan, and like that like the way that framing was addressed directly as part of the episode, I'm hopeful that that helps kind of frame the discussion a little bit better. There's still obviously, you know, I still think the majority of people who feel that way are probably not going to be changed in their minds by this. But like you said, hopefully there's at least like a small minority of people who like use it as a point of reflection. Who knows? Regardless, I'm still like up on the season overall, even though we had a couple of slower episodes, and I'm excited for the rest of the season.
Definitely.
You guys want to shout out your social media and we close this out?
DJ Clubberlang at Twitter, Clubberlang with 2 B's. Follow me. I'll yell. We'll start race discussions together. Healthy race discussions.
Yeah. You can follow me on Twitter at the fake BMAR. That's BMARR. You can also check out our other channel, Wicked Good Sports. Talk about mostly Boston sports. I do cover the Dolphins as well, as I'm a huge Miami Dolphins fan. And yeah, you can follow our website. That's wickedgoodeverythingsports.com.
And you can follow me on Twitter at Ben Sharon. I'm still not as active on Twitter as I have been historically. I tweeted a couple things out about BB Can 10 recently, because I'm absolutely loving BB Can 10. I'm so excited to see how this wraps up. You know, no major spoilers, but the person that I think is likely to win the season is one of my favorite players of all time watching Big Brother. Like he's playing the game like I would want to play Big Brother. So if you're a Big Brother or Survivor fan and you've not checked out Big Brother Canada, I highly recommend to go back and watch BB Can 10 from the start. One of the best seasons of reality TV I've seen in a long time.
Nice.
You know, if you have extra cycles in your reality TV watching, you want to check that out. And you can check out my handful of tweets I put out about it. Otherwise, you can follow the main channel, Wicked Good Everything, on Twitter at WG Everything, and then on TikTok, Twitch, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram at Wicked Good Everything. Otherwise, this is the podcast channel on YouTube, Better Radio, and this has been the Blindsiders on all major podcasting platforms. Until next time, this has been the Blindsiders.